Hey up lads and lasses, Damphyre here, back again with some more Infinite Lagrange, and we have the cruiser ranking update. So I've tested quite a few of these, I've seen them being tested and I've got battle reports for a lot of them. There is one or two ships I'm not 100% certain on, but I'm going to make a rough estimate from what I can gather, because I have seen all the mods, I have seen all the IOs, for example, like maxed out and stuff like that. So I can make some rough estimates here, even though I haven't seen some of these in complete use, but most of them I have, so the tier list should be relatively accurate. But yeah, without further ado, let's jump into it. So, starting off with the Callistos, because why the hell not? So we have the heavy torp Callisto. This is S tier. It's absolutely absurd alpha damage and just batters the likes of battle cruisers, carriers, and other cruisers to absolute oblivion. It's just extensively strong in comparison to pretty much everything else, in my opinion, to the point where I should probably have added an extra rank up here just for the heavy torpedo, like SS tier or something. Yeah, it's just too good, I think, in my opinion. However, though, there'll be some interesting things I'm talking about later on that might, if you can get it, will drop the Callistos down a tier or two. We then have the base Callisto, the Torpedo variant. It is A tier. It's, again, high damage, anti-cruiser. It's cluster torps as well, which just seem to do really well in this game for some reason. I mean, if you look at the ships that do run cluster torps, the Quawa, the Reliat, Callisto, all of them do seem to do pretty damn good damage. It's kind of unfortunate that the cluster torp on the SD59 isn't anywhere near as good. If it was on par with the heavy torpedo Callisto, you'd probably be alright with the SD59s as a main battle cruiser for everything. But, well, there you go. The Callisto UAV, I'm going to put this down into C tier. It's kind of borderline B tier, though. The UAVs are useful. It's just there are better support-style cruisers within the lineup. So I think it does deserve C tier, because it loses half of its DPM from the torpedo. It loses 4 of the torps there. So that's, half of its damage, probably drops it down to B. The UAVs are okay, and there are better supports that you can put in slots. So I think that's probably about right. We have the CAS 066 aircraft. It carries 2 corvettes in. It's okay. It's nothing special. Yeah, I think in B tier is quite alright for that. Is it better than the Callisto? It's probably not really, is it? Does it go C tier then? We're going to put C tier, actually. I'm changing my mind. It's going in C tier and behind the Callisto UAV. I think the Callisto UAV has slightly more use than the CAS aircraft variant. The CAS artillery variant, no, goes into B tier. It's actually not a bad little ship. It's got decent DPM. It's got a load of stuff to buff up its hit rate against frigates and destroyers, which makes it semi-okay against the likes of Carillion spam and that kind of stuff. It is direct fire, though, so it will target that front line first. So you do need to be aware that if they are running the likes of Carillion, it's going to try and target them over trying to target something behind in the mid row or the rear row, but it does an okay job at it. The integrated type is also going to go into B tier. It's pretty good for its cost. Front row, decent armor, good health pool. It tanks pretty well. Its armor upgrades are pretty decent. It's got pretty okay in the cruiser class for energy resistances as well, and its torps do some good work as well. They're in direct fire. They will hit your mid row, they will hit the rear row before they target anything on the front row, so they are just going to do pretty good. And yeah, I think they're pretty solid mid-tier choice in my opinion. We have the Chimera Ballistic. I am going to put that front of B tier. This is the base variant. Its damage is okay. It's like pretty respectable in my opinion in the cruiser tier list, especially as one of the bigger of the DPM boats. But it's nothing outrageously good. It's got subpar energy resistances. It has got an increased armor resistance over that, but I think due to the fact that you do find a lot of fleets nowadays running a lot of energy, you'll find that the Chimera, it kind of feels a bit glass cannon-y still and does get dropped pretty rapidly. We have the defensive. I'm going to put that in B tier. It's mid-row. It's a defensive cruiser. It sits in the mid-row, which is where you don't really want it. Yes, situationally, it can be quite useful because that means the likes of Callistos will target it over the front line. But at the same time, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't synergize into fleets properly because of it being sat in mid-row. So unfortunately, I will have to drop that to C. Again, energy resistance is on it, also subpar. It has got the increased health and the increased armor though, but like I mentioned with the ballistic version of the Chimera, it does seem to struggle a bit there. We then have the Chimera Heavy Cannon, which will go into A row, but it will go behind the Callisto Torpedo variant. It's due to the fact, again, it's front row. It's got low energy res, it's got all the same issues the other Chimeras have, but it's bringing some pretty solid damage output, and it can definitely dish out a hell of a lot of damage. We then look at the IO Ion Cannon variant. It's better than the base Chimera in my opinion, but not as good as the Chimera Heavy Cannon. Heavy Cannon, not Canyon. Does create canyons though, probably. The Ion Cannon though, it's pretty solid. Good dodge rate, pretty good resistances, okay armor. It does still feel glass cannon-y, but I have found that it does seem to last a lot longer than a Chimera on the front line. And its damage is decent. Again, it's an energy-based weapon, so, you know, it does ignore a lot of the big armor ships that you find on the front. Has got some issues, though, I've noticed, with targeting anything smaller than destroyers. It does seem to struggle hitting them and applying its damage, but I think that's pretty much the same for pretty much all of the cruisers at the end of the day. Now, this is the one that I am not 100% certain on, but I think the anti-ship variant might be A tier. And the reason for this is, okay, its DPM is genuinely lower than the Ion Cannon IO, but the IO has an 8-second lock-on time, right? The anti-ship's 4-second lock-on time. It's also got a cooldown of 0.7 seconds fire rate, which is absolutely absurd, which means it can switch targets a lot quicker than the IO Ion Cannon, meaning that in fleets, there's a very good chance that the anti-ship variant may realistically apply its damage a lot more efficiently than the base IO. And that is my reasoning for putting it into A tier. Again, it's still got all the fantasticness of the IO, good dodge rate, same armor and energy resistances, and also, you know, reasonable HP for being a front row ship. We have the IO Siege. I'm going to put this in situational, although it can probably fit onto the list itself. It would probably be in B tier. It kind of sucks in fleets and anti-fleets. I say it sucks. It does reasonably well. You can run it. It doesn't hurt it too much over, say, the base IO, but it is worse than the base IO. But what it can do is absolutely and utterly decimate amps intermediate mining posts, basic mining posts, outposts, it doesn't matter. I run 8 of these, and I've been running them recently, and they're maxed, and I run them recently in a 4 IO fleet. So you got 4 in one fleet, 4 in the other fleet. They can knock out an amp when there's only 4 of them in 5 minutes. And when there's all 8 of them in a fleet, you can knock an amp out before most people can react to you hitting their amp, even if the base is next to them. You can normally get the amp, and that's really, really where the power lies, is just nullifying your enemy's ability to generate any income whatsoever. And the Siege IO is exceptionally good at that. It's, I believe, probably the best siege ship in the game, just due to the fact huge amounts of siege damage, very fast as well, keeping up with most destroyers, meaning it's quite difficult to catch as well. So yeah, it is pretty decent. Again, it can hold its own to an extent within a fleet, so you can use it in a fleet, but it is better, I think, by itself in a specific role of siege warfare. We have the Jaeger aircraft. This is A tier. It's flat out better than the CAS aircraft, and that's mostly due to the fact that it's just carrying 2 more corvettes, which does make it one of the most efficient corvette carriers in the game. Other than that, it's not particularly great, but because it is your cruiser and it is the best in the slot for carrying corvettes, it's got to go into A. The heavy cannon version of it is top C tier. It's kind of like someone attempted to try and make like their heavy cannon Chimera again, but it just doesn't work anywhere near as well for some reason. And this is why you probably don't see many people, or if anybody, running them whatsoever in comparison to like pretty much all the cruisers above it. They almost all outdamage it. So it just loses, you know, its carrying capability for just lackluster DPM, and it just puts it in a really bad position. We then have the KCPV 2.0, the aircraft variant, and this is interesting. I think it goes into B tier, and the reason for that is, yeah, okay, it's not as good at carrying as, say, the Predator, but the Predator's limited to medium bays, where the KCCPV is large bays, which means you can put bombers on it. If you are struggling to find, and you have got bombers and you don't have the likes of carriers like CV3Ks, Marshall Crooks, or Solar Whales, this is going to be what you need to bring to carry your bombers, and it does a reasonably good job at that. Which is good news, because I'm just going to do this quick. That goes in D, that goes in D, and that goes in D. The rest of the KCPV line are absolutely trash and should never have been brought into the game in the first place. They are by far the worst carriers in all of their respective classes in comparison to every other carrier in the game, by like a considerable margin as well. So, the light cone AA. Now, remember I said at the start that I was going to go, there is something that can potentially heavily counter the Callisto. It's the light cone AA variant. With mods, it can go up to 55% missile interception, and it works. Like, actually works. It also sits on the front. So even if those Callisto are trying to shoot anything on the mid row or the rear row, the missiles pass through the front row, and these will knock out a hell of a lot of them. With testing, with only 2 in my fleet recently, against a NPC that was specifically mostly missiles, it was running Rager torpedoes and stuff like that, it was consistently reducing the damage I was taking from the fleet by about 30 to 40%, which actually makes it very, very, very good. But that is quite a situational thing, because the rest of it is pretty damn terrible, unfortunately. So I am going to put that into situational. Running 1 or 2 of them in your fleets can be quite beneficial and will reduce the amount of damage you take overall, which is very useful. Again, though, if they don't have anything on the front row that is tanking for them though, and they get destroyed, you just lose all of the, you know, ability that they have, and that ability is only for knocking out missiles, and you're only really going to see it in effect when you're seeing heavy Callisto fleets or heavy CAS integrated fleets, because pretty much everything else are energy and cannons. So it is a very situational ship. I do recommend trying it out though. It is kind of funny watching Callistos and the likes have their damage reduced, and by quite a margin. If it's the heavy torp one, it hurts it even more because they're not even cluster torps. They just lose their entire alpha. The light cone assault is going ahead of the Jaeger, behind the IO anti-ship. No, ahead of the IO anti-ship. So the light cone assault brings spotter UAVs in, which increases the hit rate of your entire fleet. Fantastic. It brings in 3 of its missile systems instead of just 1 on the AA variant and 2 on the generic variant, meaning it's got reasonable amounts of DPM, to the point where my light cones generally keep up with my Callisto with the same amount of tech points into both. So they actually do pretty well. It's also got strategies for increased damage against cruisers and the likes. Again, it's got more synergy by adding increased hit rate for your fighters, because that's on all of the light cones. It's got the spotter UAVs as well. It's probably one of the best and most versatile support ships in the game. It then also provides reasonable amounts of DPM. So if you have got the light cone assault, do check it out. It's definitely worth testing and having a go with. And it's currently one of my favorite ships in my fleet. It's been doing really good. We then have the light cone generic. I'm going to stick that into above the, it's above the integrated, behind the artillery. No, it's behind the Chimera. Again, it's kind of like the assault. It's got an anti-air UAV this time, which sadly doesn't seem to be working properly, or if it is, it's just absolutely god-awful and needs a huge buff to make it work. It has still got the increased hit rate for aircraft within your fleet, which is fantastic. And it has also got 2 of the same missile systems, the assault runs, which are, you know, reasonable. They're not the biggest damage, they're not Callisto kind of damage, but there's a lot of missiles they fire off, and they do okay. The Predator AA swaps out its hangars for AA aircraft, and yeah, it goes into D tier. It loses the reason you run a Predator in the first place, which is hangars, and yeah, it's trash. The AA doesn't even work on it. It's AA UAVs, and again, I'm not sure if it's because the AA UAVs are broken or not, or what, because I've seen them working on the Xeno defensives, so I don't understand why they wouldn't work on the Predators or the light cones. So yeah, if they get round to fixing these, this light cone AA will probably go to A tier. The Predator will probably go up to C or B tier. But for now, it's going D tier, and the light cone's going into situational. The generic Predator is the best of the carriers in the cruiser class. It carries 4. It carries 4 aircraft, which is pretty decent. Yeah, it's medium base, so you can only fit your fighters and stuff like that into it. But it does mean that, you know, if you just run 2 of them, that's 8 Sandrakes. You can run another 2, put 8 of your spores on there, and that's more or less almost all you need. And that's a reasonably large amount of firepower that it's bringing in, or anti-air support for the rest of your fleet. And yeah, definitely pretty good. Actually, I'm going to put it in B tier, because we are talking about the Predator Tactical now. It's got all the carrying capabilities of the Predator generic. But at the same time, it's also got UAVs that spot. So it's just like pure power creep over the basic Predator. It loses nothing over the basic Predator and gains more support for your fleet. So yeah, it's just flat out better in every way over the generic Predator. A bit unfortunate, but you know, there it is. It'd be nice to see if they actually gave the generic Predator maybe large hangars or 2 large hangars. So there is some variance between the Predator generic and the tactical, and it's not just that the tactical's like pure power creep over the base. So there we go. That is the tier list for the cruisers. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Leave any comments down below on what you think about this tier list and any ships that you think I have done injustice to, even though that the Heavy Cannon Eris is absolutely terrible. But there we go. Have a good one, guys, and I'll catch you next time.